Welcome back to the Data Science Hangout, everybody. I'm Rachel. I lead customer marketing here at Posit and the host of the Data Science Hangout.
And I'm Libby. Oh, sorry. I'm
Oh,
Libby.
go ahead.
I'm a community manager who works here at Posit with Rachel, and I'm also a Posit Academy mentor.
And we're so happy to have you joining us today. The Hangout is our open space to hear what's going on in the world of data across different industries, to chat about data science leadership, and connect with others who are facing similar things as you. And we get together here every Thursday at the same time, same place. So if you're watching this as a recording in the future, and you want to join us live, there'll be details to add it to your calendar below. We're all dedicated to keeping this the friendly and welcoming space that you all have made it over the years, and love to hear from you no matter your years of experience, titles, industry, or languages that you work in. And I know people really enjoy connecting with other attendees in the chat as well, and we love to see the chat that happens. So I want to encourage you to briefly introduce yourself over there in the Zoom chat and say hi, maybe your role, where you're based, something you do for fun, or even share your LinkedIn if you want. You could also use the chat to share any open roles that your team may be hiring for as well.
And there are a few ways to jump in and ask questions today, or just to share your own experience, because that's also wonderful. You can raise your hand in Zoom. Rachel and I will call on you to jump in and ask your question. You can also put your question directly into the Zoom chat, and we will call on you to unmute and ask your question or give some context around it. But if you happen to be somewhere loud or your mic's not working or what have you, you can put a little asterisk next to your question in the chat. That'll let us know to read it for you. And then there's also a Slido link that will be in the chat where you can ask your question anonymously if you don't feel brave enough to unmic today. That's totally fine. And we are so happy to be joined today by our co-host, Sharon Machlis, who is a longtime tech journalist and data professional who has recently retired. Everybody celebrate with Sharon that she's recently retired from Computer World / IDG Communications, renamed Foundry. Sharon, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey, and I'm unmuted. Yeah, I am a long time, as you said, long time technology journalist. I started my career as a daily newspaper reporter. And when we get into unexpected career paths, I wanted to be a political. I love data. I actually was thinking about majoring in statistics, but at the time I went to college, when dinosaurs roamed the earth, there was no R, no Python, no data journalism, and I took political stats. I'm like, wow, should I change my major? I really love this. And I'm like, well, what can I do with this? I don't want to teach. I don't want to be an actuary. No, I'll stick to what I was doing. I mean, like if I was today, things would be so different. But two of us had wanted to be the State House reporter, and the other guy got that job because the editor said I was better with numbers, and I ended up as the business reporter. And that was when the Route 28 area outside of Boston was like a hotbed of mini computer technology. And so I started covering tech, and I'm like, wow, I super love this. And that's where it all started. I spent a long time working as a journalist, a tech journalist, writer, and editor at Computer World. And in 2017, I was asked to change roles to be a data professional because I was doing data journalism. And to keep my R skills sharp, I started working with our website analytics, and people liked those reports I was doing. And here we are. So, and I just retired a month ago. So July 31st was my last full-time working day. So this is all pretty new. So thank you for having me, even though I'm now leading the life of leisure. But I do hope to still keep my hands in things and follow the R space, the generative AI space, because things are so cool and exciting and fun. So
Thank you. I'm
Sharon.
sure you'll be here for a long time more.
And thank you for sharing a little bit about that journey as well. So I know you just like touched on it, but can you share a little bit more about like that decision to start to use R? Like what kind of got you to that point where
Well,
you're
it's really funny because I was working with our federal government reporter on a data journalism project, and he got this really cool data set, and it had over 100,000 rows, and this was, you know, over 10 years ago, and I'm trying to open this in Excel, and then we're like, we find something odd here, and then the source for the data set is like, oh no, there was a mistake, and then of course you know what happened is like, oh my god, I have to like do all my formulas all over again, shoot me now. And I don't even remember where I found out about R, but I found it. I'm like, why did someone not tell me about this sooner? So this was like in 2012 or 2013. This was pre-tidyverse, so I was learning base R. And then the tidyverse happened and dplyr happened, and I'm like, wow, this is the greatest thing ever. Because I had coded in a number of different languages before. You know, my graduate computer class, we learned Pascal, just to let you know how long ago we're talking about. Uh, but I had really liked Perl, I liked PHP, I learned SQL, but somehow the syntax of R just spoke to me, particularly when we got to the tidyverse. dplyr was like, oh my God, this is just amazing. And that was it. And I switched from SQL and PHP to R. I am trying to learn more Python now because I'm super interested in generative AI. And while you can do some good generative AI stuff with R. I mean, all the really good platforms like LangChain and Haystack and Llama Index, they're all either JavaScript or Python. So, which is fine. I mean, it's always now I have time to learn. So
awesome. Well, Sharon, we forgot to ask you this in your introduction, but what's something that you like to do in your free time that also isn't data related?
photography, love photography. Also love running. Those are two super fun things. And I'm learning American Sign Language. I have a deaf niece, and that's been really interesting.
Nice. So now you have a lot more time for that too, maybe.
Yeah, well, the ASL, I mean, I've learned other spoken languages and I've learned other computer languages, but this thing about a visual geospatial language is just like a different part of my brain, and it's really interesting.
I love it. That sounds expansive and wonderful. Well, I have a quick question for you.
Yes.
I would love to know, being a journalist, what did you learn about data storytelling that you can share with us as an audience that frequently needs to tell stories with data or communicate to stakeholders? What have you learned through your journey?
Yeah. In my time as an editor, mentoring younger writers, the big thing I always would tell them is you have to answer two questions. So what? Who cares? And that's with everything. That's really with everything. And the the journalism things about you need to grab someone early. You have to have a good headline and a good lead paragraph because people have the attention spans of a gnat. I started my career in the print days when you had page one of what we would call above the fold. It was sitting there on the newsstand or in the machine. And, you needed to grab people if they wanted to like take money out of their pocket. I mean, it's kind of the same online. It's not that different. You need a good headline and a good description. And it's the same with data. I learned early we would be in page one pitch meetings, the daily page one, and you'd have to make your pitch to the editor, who's like, the overall editor, who it was just not as immersed in this cool thing. And they call that an elevator pitch now or whatever. But I mean, you have to be, if you can't say it in 3 sentences about why this is cool and interesting, then go back and do it again. I mean, that's just kind of the things you learn as a writer. And it is the same thing with telling stories with data. And I needed help with people to make that connection, because somehow I was like not doing that when I started doing data stuff. It's like, wow, like look at all this cool data. Like, wouldn't one want to spend half an hour and dive into that? And yeah, they don't. So, you know,
Quick question. Kylie asked, did you take your background photo?
I did. Thank you very much. This is up in the White Mountains of New Hampshire during the Lupin Festival in June a couple of years ago. Yes, thank you.
Beautiful. Um, Si- Sita Priya, and apologies if I mispronounced your name. I see you had a question in the chat. Do you want to jump in here?
Sure. I wanted to know what was your most favorite headline that you wrote?
Oh gosh, I honestly, I wish I could answer that, but I can't because I honestly don't remember. Most of my favorite stories I wrote, and writers don't write the headlines; the editors write the headlines. So it's a great question, but I just can't think of anything right now. Sorry.
Isabella had asked on our team, how do you write such high quality articles so quickly? And what tips may you be able to share with us?
Thank you so much. It's funny because I feel like I can write, and I had a lot of experience writing news on deadline for print deadline. I mean, it's like the deadline is 9 a.m. if you want to make the print edition. If it's 9:03, you don't make the day's paper. So you just get really good at it. I'm much better at writing news articles fast and on deadline than feature articles because news has a kind of template, really. It's what they call the inverted pyramid. You put the most important stuff first: who, what, where, when, and why, and then you go down. And then, so again, print days. If someone has to go in with their X-Acto knife and slice off the last 3 paragraphs, it still makes sense. But a feature article is not like that. And wow, those take me a lot longer, and I don't have any tips for how to do those fast because I'm probably slower than someone who hasn't done it, for 30 plus years, but it's not a quick process. I would say one of the things I like to do in the newsroom is just like go and talk to a colleague who wasn't involved in it, and like while I was excited, try to tell them what I was writing about. And if I couldn't do it before really quickly before their eyes glazed over, I needed to go back and figure out what it was that was so interesting and that had captured me.
Thank you. I mean, I can't imagine writing anything quickly, so I'm amazed either way. Mike, you had a fantastic question. Would you like to ask that?
Yeah, so Sharon, I thank you for posting your definitive guide to getting started on Mastodon. Um, can you kind of summarize for folks here, like why they should think about moving to Mastodon and, tips for finding our people there?
Yeah, so I mean, not to get all political, but I mean, I loved Twitter until the ownership changed and I got unhappy. But a lot of the art community has actually moved to Mastodon. Mastodon is not quite as easy to figure out because you have to pick the server you want, and then like you may not see everybody if you're on a small server. And if Mike, if you want to post the link to that in the chat, maybe that would help people. I do. I am collecting people who post about R. I using R, of course, because Mastodon does have an API, and I'm querying some of the largest servers to see who's posting with the R stats hashtag, and I will dig that up if someone else doesn't dig it up, I will dig it up for you and post it, because that's really helpful. There is no algorithm, so like things won't be surfaced for you. You have to be your own algorithm. But if you follow a few people who repost a lot, you'll get there. It's a little more work, but it's yours. It's yours, which I really like. And a lot of the art community is there. The political community is mostly not there. The news community is not mostly there, but art is there. So it's a good place to be, I think.
And kind of what I see there is that if you like, the nice kind of collegiate, keeping each other informed and sharing tips and tricks, that side has come across from the kind of old Twitter, but without the noise and the other nastiness. It seems to be quite a nice place to be if you can get hooked into it.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, it's a very inclusive community, and I mean also like there are a lot of cultural norms there. Like if you post an image, you must have alt text there, or people will complain to you. And I have to admit that I wasn't really good on about that on some of the social networks, and now I've been really trained to do that so much on Mastodon that I do it everywhere else also. So it's there are some nice, there are pluses and minuses, but I really like the art community on Mastodon. I would recommend it. People are nice.
And Sharon, I'll find that link and grab it and put it in the chat. But I see, Lisa, you had a follow-on question here, kind of about the fear of missing out on our stuff. Do you want to jump in?
Sure. Yeah, so I think it's pretty hard to keep up on every single new development going on in R, and especially if you spread yourself to Python as well. So how do you sort of get to be okay with not knowing everything? How do you decide which thing to investigate, and what are your tactics for going about investigating those new things, or how do you learn about those new things?
That's a really, really, really good question, because it's completely overwhelming. I remember when I started covering technology, I was covering the mini computer industry. For those of us who remember that, it was like Digital Equipment, Data General, and Prime Computer, and maybe Wang. And once every 9 months, they announce like a new model, and it was like a big deal. And the pace of change and innovation from when I started doing technology journalism is just amazing. So I would say there are a few things. I try to follow people who, I respect, and who are really good at it. Some of the package developers. When I was doing this for a living, I would try to think about, well, like, it was a little different than just like what was good for me. It was what was good for my audience. So there were certain things that are useful in the art, really useful in the art community, that were not useful to my audience. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on in the medical space, and the the bio research space, that's really interesting. But my readership at InfoWorld and Computer World were information technology professionals, and they didn't care. So I would just kind of have to skip that. And I would say, for yourself and your work, to first, to look at things and say, how could I use this? Might I use this? If you go to GitHub and you see what I follow people on GitHub, and I look to see, what's bubbling up. I will sometimes look at the R, just our stuff on GitHub to see, occasionally I'll see, is anything new popping up? And I'll look, and then I'll see. I mean, some things I'll post that I'm never going to use myself, because it looks like it'll be interesting to other people. And then there are other things that I'm like, wow, let's try this. And then, you have to be willing to waste half an hour and say, wow, I tried this thing and it's not really going to be useful for me at all. And that was a lot easier for me to do when this was my job, as opposed to like most of the rest of you, or trying to fit this into your like real job and your real lives. So it does help to follow people who do, I guess, write and report about this. I mean, I can say that now, it's not self-serving because I'm not doing it anymore. But it does. Unfortunately, there aren't that many people covering the art community. I mean, there are a lot of people doing it as a passion, but in terms of commercial journalists, sadly, there aren't that many people doing it. I think more people do it for Python. My former colleague Serdar at InfoWorld covers Python, and he's really good. I would like follow anything he says, honestly. We did one joint webinar together about, back in the day, pre-positron, when it was like really kind of hard to run Python in our studio. It's all super easier now. He kind of helped explain, like, well, why should I use a virtual environment? Which, I mean, I should be doing that in R2, and I don't. But wow, you really should in Python. It is surprising how many package conflicts there are when you're just trying to do basic things. So I don't know if that answers the question. It's hard. It's hard, and you will miss things, and you have to be okay with that. But if something, Eventually, if something is like super amazing, like you will find out about it, even if you just casually follow social media, because it'll bubble up. LinkedIn is another. I know there are some people who don't like LinkedIn because it's a little bit self-promotional, but LinkedIn has a lot of good art people also. And it has an
Thank
algorithm, so things will bubble up if a lot of other people like it. I'm on both Mastodon and LinkedIn very regularly.
Yeah, the algorithm helps actually. I think the intimidating thing about Mastodon for me is that there is no algorithm. I'm like, oh no, this is so much work. I have to be the algorithm, you know?
It is,
Um,
and there's been a lot of discussion from people who are like, you need to, Mastodon should consider that, even if it's an opt-in thing.
mhm.
Uh, but because people are worried it'll change the culture that suddenly people will be going for likes. And I see both sides of it. I really do.
Interesting. Well, it'll be interesting to see where our community, our stats community goes as, the fall of Twitter has happened. But I had a really great question from Abigail pop up. Abigail, do you want to ask?
Yeah, thanks, Libby. So, I feel like there was sort of this moment of everybody is going to write code, and people who are journalists will write code, and like everybody will write like a little bit of code. And I don't hear much about that these days. Like, how do you think about sort of the specialization thing in terms of to what extent it makes sense for newspapers to have like your data scientists and your developers over here and your journalists over here versus people who have subject matter expertise in something and also code, or journalists who code? Like, how do you think about the specialization thing?
That's a lot of great questions here. That is a great question. I think not everyone has to be a coding expert, but I think even basically, if you're a local news reporter and you're writing about budgets and spending and campaign finance, yeah, I think you can do a lot with being a Power Excel user. But I really do think that it helps to have just sort of a basic knowledge. But everyone can't be an expert in everything. And I think it's really helpful for media people to have people on staff who are data journalists. I think it's really helpful. Now, the question that arises these days is, well, what about generative AI and how much can it help people who don't know how to code well? And I think it will help. If you, I think someone who knows the basics, who understands the basics, but isn't like super fast at it and isn't super good at it because they don't do it every day, I think generative AI will help. And I think, 1, 2 years from now, it's going to be a lot better. But if you don't know what you're doing and you get crappy code and you can't fix it, it's just going to end up wasting your time. I mean, it also depends what you're asking it to do. I'm trying to learn the Haystack uh, platform now for generative AI. It's new. It's not that popular. Haystack 2.0 came out not that long ago. Trying to get ChatGPT to write stuff like that for me, like it's really painful. But when I'm asking it to help me with like super basic Python, because I can never remember what the commands are to deal with pandas data frames, like it's really, really, really good. So it also depends on what you're trying to do, I think. I think for the basics, we'll find that generative AI will be a big assist, if that answers the question.
Sharon, I know when you and I were chatting, we talked a little bit about like domain expertise sometimes being undervalued. And I wonder if that weighs in here as well on this topic of generative AI.
It weighs in really heavily both with generative AI and also with data science, because I data journalism, because it is just, if you're a data scientist and you're working on a journalism project and you're not a domain expert, you need to partner with a domain expert. I mean, you just have to, or just you're going to make terrible, terrible mistakes. Whether that's a journalism project or actually, I because I understood our media business so well, I understood all the weird quirks that we had in our Google Analytics implementations. I understood, like, oh, like you think this is important, but actually it's not necessarily as important as you think, because blah blah blah. I mean, because I had the domain expertise, it it made me a much better data professional on my job, even though there are a million people who could code better than me, who have more training about data science than I do. but they couldn't compete with me and my knowledge of the business. I mean, knowledge of the business is just so important. And I mean, when they hire my replacement, they can't hire someone who has 25 years of experience at the company. I mean, so they're going to be, what they're looking for now is the data science expertise. I mean, I literally could not qualify for the new job that they put in for my replacement, which is not really my replacement. It's a completely different position. But this is also one, by the way, one of the things I want to remember to talk about when we're talking about careers before I forget. When I got pulled into this, the whole data journalism thing and the sort of like using data for our analytics, it was still a pretty new field. I mean, it wasn't new. There were like a million people who were working on it like decades ago. But I mean, in terms of being like suddenly, if you remember all the headlines, wow, data science is a new cool, like sexy profession. I mean, that was relatively recent. And there weren't a ton of people who had the formal training. There are a lot of people who have the formal training now. And my guess is it's a little more difficult to break in now without the formal training, which is really sad because I think a lot of people without formal training would be awesome. But where we are, where that was then, we are with generative AI now. Yes, there are a lot of people who've been working on machine learning for 15 years and they're experts, but this whole thing of how you use generative AI well, almost everyone is at the same place. I think if you're young or mid-career and you're interested in that, especially if you're somewhere else and planning to move to that, this is your moment, in my opinion. Get really up to speed as much as you can and go for it. Because I just really feel that's where we are now, where I was in my career in 2016.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Mauro, I see you had a question a little bit earlier in the chat. Do you want to jump in here?
Yeah, sure. It's a question
It's a
about,
little bit quiet. We can't hear you. I'm not sure if the headphones.
let's see, does that help at all? Yeah, okay, great, thank you. Yeah, it's a question about writing. Actually, I realized that some of the developers that I admire are also very good writers. And some time ago, I came across that quote that says something like, as a developer, you are first, writing for humans rather than computers. So I wonder if you could share your favorite resources to learn how to write well, which I'm guessing that also connects with writing software well.
Yeah, that's, I would say see what you like, see what, I mean, I think reading good writing is just very inspiring. I mean, that's kind of the way I feel. I mean, it's been so long since I went to school. I did study journalism in school. That was like a billion years ago, before like there was a World Wide Web even. So I don't have like a lot of good ideas in terms of like learning to write, but I think it's a great idea to look at things and see what you like and what you don't like, and then ask yourself why. When like, well, okay, I think this is kind of terrible. How might I, kind of the same way you would do with software, like how might I rewrite it? How could it be better? And I do think that commenting your code, I mean, I know like we all say we should do it and like nobody wants to do it because we're on a rush to like, to get the thing written, but it's a really good exercise if you can't really explain what you're doing in comments, then like, and also documenting your code as well. I do think, I think everyone can learn to write and reasonably well. I don't think, just the way like everyone can run. And I can finish a 10K, but I can't finish a 10K fast. Everyone can, I can learn to dance, but I can't be a professional dancer. I think that, but I do think everyone can learn to write reasonably well, if not like get paid for it. In some, as a professional writer, it's sometimes, I'll be honest here, now that, I'm retired and who cares. But it would kind of irritate me when it's like, everyone should blog, like everyone should have a blog. I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, it's good to do that. But I mean, when you're putting it out in the world, like make sure that you have a degree of competence before you're telling people read this, the same way as, you know, everyone can write software, but before you're telling people use my software, like make sure you have a certain degree of confidence. You know, I will say I worked for 8 years before between my newspaper job and working at Computer World, InfoWorld, IDG, Foundry. I spent a few years at an engineering magazine where half the staff were writers and half the staff were engineers. And it was just amazing because some of these engineers were just like incredible writers. And I'm like, how can you do this? How can you be both technical and write this way? And some of them were really ghastly, you know, and you know, yeah, how much of it is native talent versus not doing the work? I can't really say, but
Thank you so much. I love that. I think that part of the thing is like doing a lot of it. Maybe before you put it out there, just do a lot of writing. Practice makes perfect, or practice makes adequate.
you know, it's also interesting now because people are talking about using generative AI and Chat GPT and Claude as editors, where like you put your
mhm.
thing in and say, like, well, you know, like put you know, act as an audience of what, you know, like whoever your audience is, you know, like beginning art developers or IT professionals, and here's this thing, you know, how you know, what do you think about it? What would you suggest? There are people who do this for a living who are actually starting to use that, and that's an interesting resource if you don't, I mean, because everyone knew at work. One of my editors was always one of my mottos in the newsroom was always everyone needs an editor, you know. And when I was writing, I needed an editor. When I was an editor, I'm like, yeah, everyone needs an editor. When you're doing it yourself and you don't have an editor, you are really at a disadvantage, I think. And you know, the possibility of using a Claude or ChatGPT, and a lot of people say Claude is really good at writing and writing style, so that's another possibility. Uh, that's, you know, I can't guarantee that it's going to give you great advice because maybe it won't, but you know, it might be fun to play around with.
I love it. Kind of like rubber duck debugging, but for writing. And I have a question that is a little bit selfish. I would love to ask you if you've ever had a career setback that really felt bad at the time, but it ended up being a blessing in disguise or sent you in a better direction.
It's the one that I talked about at the beginning when I talked about. I mean, I mean, my dream was to be a political writer. And, you know, I studied political science and journalism in school. I mean, that was like the whole point. I mean, I did take a computer course back in the day when it was really difficult to get into computer courses because unless you were majoring in it, like, you know, they couldn't really spare the computer time. You know, I was going in there with my cards. I mean, it was like those days. Uh, and when I found out that the other guy got to be, you know, the Washington reporter, and then the other guy got to be the State House reporter, and I didn't, I was really crushed. I was crushed. And then it turned out like I started covering business, and that was just at the rise of the mini computers in the Route 128 belt in Boston. You have to be really old enough to know that that was a huge, you know, world center of technology in the 80s. I'm like, this is really cool. I'm having a lot of fun with this. So, you know, my whole career ended up turning on this like sort of weird decision by one guy who's like, and I mean, I will tell you, in the 1980s, for a male editor to say, I want the woman to be the business editor because she's better in numbers, and the guy can be I mean, that was like super not usual. I mean, that was still in the days where I would go to these business meetings and there would be like maybe one other woman there. Uh, but you just never know. It turned out to be a great thing, and I had a career that I really loved.
Thank you. Arsenis, I see I missed a question from you way in the beginning, and would love to have you ask that next.
Sure, no worries. Thanks, Rachel. And so yeah, my question is actually pretty simple. I'm wondering if you might be able to talk a little bit about any tips that you might have or anything that you've learned along the way for making your data itself or kind of like a data story more interesting than it usually is to a lot of people. When I start talking about data to folks, their eyes glass over and that kind of thing. So yeah, just wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
You know, going back to my days as a business writer, and it's really hard when you love data to not want to like chuck all the interesting numbers like right at the top of your story. And I kind of learned that you really kind of have to spread it out. And you can't put, 3 data facts in your lead, and you can't put a ton of numbers in your lead because sadly, everyone is not like us. They should be, but they're not. No, I'm kidding. But I'm not kidding about everyone is not like us. But the first time I became a manager and got management training, I mean, it's kind of embarrassing to say, but it's like it was just such a big revelation. Like people don't like talk a lot at meetings just to annoy me personally, but it's like kind of the way they work through things, and just the idea that people are like different the way they want to get information. And I just have to keep reminding myself that it's like if you're talking to people who are not data people, and you're sending them like an email or a memo or like a dashboard or something, you really have to limit the amount of numbers that you put in at the very beginning. It's like your lead. You have to draw them in. You have to tell them this. You have to start telling them this story with one compelling thing, not like 5 data points that they have to sort of use their cognitive energy to figure out, well, what's more important here? Uh, that's why the graphs where they highlight the important things and gray out everything else are Financial Times does that a lot. It's really compelling because people who are not data people don't want to use their cognitive energy to figure it out. It's like, we love that. That's like the fun. Like you have this, like, oh my God, I have this big data set. Like, what can I see in there? What can I do with it? Let's go play with it. And oddly enough, so many other people are not like that.
Thank you.
Thank
Well,
you, Sharon.
I have a hard turn back to social media
Yes.
question for you.
Love
Nessa, would
social
you like to ask your question?
Oh yeah, hi there. Yeah, I was just asking about other alternative platforms out there because all the people that I know in the world of chemistry, actually not all of them, but the majority have moved to Bluesky post Twitter. And I just realized as I was here, I've been on Bluesky for a while following all my chemistry people, and I don't think I really follow any data people on there. Is there a data Bluesky? Is there a data Freds or something?
Yeah, unfortunately, since what happened to Twitter happened, the what do they call it, microblogging platforms have kind of fractured, and I think it's still shaking out. Blue Sky, I think you have to have an Instagram account in order to have Blue Sky, and I don't even have an Instagram
That
account.
one's for Freds, but yeah,
Oh,
Freds is
okay,
Instagram.
okay,
Blue Sky is
okay.
its own thing.
I'm sorry, that's Threads. Blue Sky is the former Twitter. Is Jack?
Yes.
Yeah.
It
Okay.
was, yeah.
Yeah. My feeling. I mean, my personal feeling about that was, I kind of got shafted from Twitter in terms of not being happy with the way the ownership changed, and I didn't want to have the same issue with Blue Sky because it could conceivably the same thing happen. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's just I'm not there, and I don't think there are people there. I don't know if our people are there. Threads is starting to federate with Mastodon now. You can now like people on Threads who have turned on federation. You can now like follow them, although the interaction doesn't work as well. I would like to say another thing that I do use a lot is RSS. Going back to the first question about how you keep up, I should have mentioned this. I do use RSS feeds a lot, and I use Bob Brutus, if you're familiar with him. He's a security guy who's big in the R community. He had recommended iKnowReader for me a while ago, and I was using the free version. I wasn't all that excited about it. I'm like, am I really going to pay for this thing? Well, now I'm paying for this, and I can't live without it. I read it all the time. So if you have the paid version, you can, in addition to following RSS feeds, you can also follow some websites that don't have RSS feeds, but you could like turn them into one. I'm trying to remember if it's Bluesky or Threads, but one of them does have RSS. I think it's Bluesky, does have RSS feeds for all the people on there. So you can actually import that into an RSS reader if you aren't on there. I am also using this. A couple of people have a bridge from Twitter to Mastodon, and I follow some people that way. Honestly, I'm still on Twitter. I still read Twitter. I have started posting political. I will not post like self-promotional stuff or data stuff on there, but until November, I'm probably going to be on there politically. But y'all don't want to follow me on Twitter if you're not interested in that, and you don't anyway. I mean, but
It's interesting to hear how people are kind of like all over the place because the good
it's really, it's, people are saying there's not going to be another thing that was like Twitter in its heyday just because things have fractured. It's really a pity. It's really a pity.
I see Bill had a question a little bit earlier that was, and Bill, feel free to jump in if you want to. I've gotten used to reading yours. Okay. But it was, were you finding, he's called out a specific person, but wasn't sure if the name was right. Were you finding that since Steve Bostock and the evolution of graphics as presented online in the New York Times has increased interest in some people about using data to tell stories?
Yeah, I'm guessing that's about Mike Bostock and the D3 and the observable.
Okay.
Observable is a really interesting thing. Unfortunately, I don't know why. But JavaScript syntax does not speak to me. I mean, it's nothing against the language. I think it's a great language, but syntax is just a personal thing, and I don't really enjoy it the way I enjoy R. But going back, I think USA Today with the weather page, that was like such an innovation. Like, oh my God, they have a whole page devoted to weather graphics. I mean, again, I'm dating myself, but y'all know I'm not young. But I think that was kind of the start of it. But yes, I do think Mike Bostock and what he did in the New York Times, what was definitely made people more interested in that. I think as more people see what you can do with data and how useful it is in their sort of mainstream consumption habits, I think it's really helpful.
Thank you. So a question I had for you, and maybe go back a little bit to your decision to enter retirement. So I'm down in Connecticut with my family this week, and I went for a walk with my dad this morning, who just retired 2 weeks ago. And so I was telling him, like, we had this conversation, and he was talking to me about, like, well, what actually, like, how did you get to the point where you decided that you were now ready to retire, and what has this process been like for you?
It was really interesting because my friends who retired said, like, when you're ready, you'll know. And I'm like, how do you know? It's like, you'll just know. And I was thinking of retiring next year, next spring. And then, well, for those of you who know about web analytics, and Google Analytics has their new version, Google Analytics 4, and that was kind of a very high burnout project dealing with that. And so I was talking to my boss about, like, after the GA4 project is done, like, can I take maybe like 4 weeks off to rest and recharge, and then like get ready to, like in August, and then get ready to, and he was looking into that with HR. And then it was Memorial Day weekend, and I was thinking of, okay, like, if I rest and recharge, like, how do I want to reshape my job, and like, what do I want to look like? And then I'm like, I don't. I'm kind of done. So, like, Thursday of Memorial Day weekend, I was like thinking about how I'm going to reshape my job. And by Monday, I'm like, yeah, I'm retiring. So it's, to say people laugh. It's like, how do you know you're in love? Like, you just know. It's like, there's not like but you do have to know that you're going to be ready to give up your professional status. And there are some people, who need the structure of work. I mean, I don't feel I do. I've been working at home since before the pandemic, and I can structure my own, whatever. But I have been blogging about I am going to sort of self promote here, but in the chat. But I have been blogging about my retirement journey. So I started like a couple of weeks before I actually retired, and so it's next chapter. This should be it, I hope. So if anyone is interested either in this sort of decision process or what it's like to be a new retiree, and I mean it's one person's experience, but I've been reading a lot about it, and it's, I was expecting it to be a lot harder than it was, but I have one post about retiring in the summer was a really good idea. One of my friends said, whatever you do, don't retire in the winter. I mean, I'm one of these people that doesn't like the dark and the cold, and to be sitting inside not doing anything would be really sad. So, but I would say if you are ready to retire, pick the season that you love the most. I mean, if you're a winter sports person and like you would like love to spend all winter skiing, like, well, yeah, then retire in the winter.
I
But
love
it
it.
was just weird. It was like I wasn't, and then I was. I can't explain it.
Thank you. I have a question here for you that is, now that you have retired, who else should we be watching for? Who else should we follow as far as data journalists or data scientists who are writing to kind of take up your torch?
I mean, I would say if someone hasn't posted the link yet about my list of people who post about R and Mastodon, I would highly recommend looking at that because that's a really good way. I did also have an app looking at the Posit conference posts. Uh and all right, I need to find that because let's see. Hang on. Yeah, so that was this. So, take a scroll through there and see who looks compelling. You can look, hang on one second, because you can like go Mastodon, which I'm not really a fan of in terms of server, but a lot of the R people are in terms of how they run their server. They got very pissy at me because I posted a couple of political things. Well, I'm like, really? Uh, but follow, you can actually follow without an account. Like if you go there, you can see the RStat stuff that's being posted. And if you add a .rss to that, you can pull it into an RSS reader. So you can start with that. Uh, I don't know if you can see who I follow on Mastodon, but I don't think my lists are public. I don't think the lists are public in Mastodon, but
We could put together a list with the recording too.
yeah, I would suggest, I mean, like, there are some really good people there. I can't, it's hard for me to think of them off the top of my head, but I do have a list, and I could send it along of the people that I have in my R stats list because they're all really interesting. So
That'd be great. George, I see you had a question where you said, as someone that works on retirement projections, and I'd be interested to learn a little bit more about what that means too, if you want to jump in and ask that question.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I work on projecting retirements and in a workforce that at one point was 100,000 people, and now I work with in a smaller organization. But it's overall just been a really interesting thing to try and predict such a thing using, predictors like age, tenure, the kind of job that they do, and various accuracy rates and over time. So I've been doing it for maybe 8 years. But yeah, I've never had the chance to actually sit down and talk to someone that is actually retired and get to know like what is that process like? What goes through your mind? What kinds of things play into that? And it's funny because you kind of just said, I don't know, I just kind of woke up one day and I knew it was time. Um, but yeah, I've never had that experience of kind of doing that exit interview, and I think that would just be really interesting. So I don't know if there's anything else you can add to that, but that's where
You know, I've heard about those retirement. I've heard about that, and God, I would love to know like when I would have been predicted to retire. Uh, but yeah, it's no, obviously, I mean, I'm close to Social Security retirement age. I mean, obviously, if you're doing retirement age, retirement projections, you don't happen to know that my husband has a government pension, but that's, that sort of gives one a lot more flexibility than one might other have, with union subsidized health retiree health insurance. I mean, those are kind of things that would be super useful to know that you probably can't know, but.
Yeah. Yeah, we know the retirement plan that the person is in. We know
Right,
the
but I mean, the spouse. I mean, the spouse. I mean, I know a lot. I know a lot of people with with spouses who either have government pensions or are still working, and they feel much freer to retire, obviously. And I mean, there's no way you can know that, but
appreciated things.
Thank you, Sharon. Alan, I saw that you just asked a question. Would you like to ask that?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Sharon. I've followed you for a while. It's fun to hear your voice and to see you in conversation.
thank you.
I'm really curious if now that you don't have the the day-to-day, week-to-week routine of the job, are there writing projects that are bigger or longer term, or things that you just couldn't get support for while you were working that you'd like to pick up that you might turn to, realizing it's only a couple weeks into vacation. You may not be ready to think about those kinds of things yet, but I'm curious if there's a new freedom to do projects that you couldn't do before that you're excited about.
There definitely are, and I mean, I do want to spend more time getting serious about learning generative AI stuff because I just think it's fascinating and super cool. And I would, I have some coding ideas in mind about local projects, like dealing with local government information, what you can do with that, whether it's government meetings and agendas, whether it's campaign finance. I mean, there's just all sorts of stuff out there that I just never had time for. I I want to spend a little more time on I have a like tiny little neighborhood blog that right now is mostly, I mean, like not my city, but like my city council district. I mean, I'm talking neighborhood. Right now I've done some stuff. It's stuff with events. So like I like I've been like web scraping events to like put in a searchable, shiny calendar and sort of stuff like that. But I'd like to get more serious about maybe covering some more of that. We have a new Friends of the. I'm really big. I like. I said I liked running. I just recently bought a new bicycle, and I'm really big on pedestrian friendly and bike friendly infrastructure. We have a new Friends of Trails group that I'd really like to get involved with and help them in some way. I think as the weather gets bad and I'm inside more, I am considering freelance writing for my old employer. I want to have some time away before I,
Mhm.
but there are just sort of bigger feature how-to projects that I never really had. My new role was supposed to be like 75 data, 25 writing, or 80/20, something like that. And I did do some writing, but as the Google Analytics project came up, it's like I just didn't really have time to write anymore, which made me sad. Uh, but to have the luxury of just learning something and then being able to write a how-to about it. uh I actually I spent about 6 months learning R on my own time, taking copious notes. I mean, this was like 2012, 2013. I mean, there weren't the kind of resources available that there are now. And I ended up with this like 60 pages of my own notes. And then I'm like, I have all these notes. Like, why am I not writing this for Computer World? And that was my Computer World Beginnings Guide to R, uh, which ended up being like one of the most popular things we had in terms of people being willing to register to download the free PDF. I don't think it would be that popular now because there's a zillion other things out there, but at the time there really weren't. So I'd like to think about some other things that are maybe underserved in terms of cool things to be able to write how to that maybe are not that commercially interesting, but that are interesting to me, I guess would be the best way to describe it.
I remember hearing about your most popular Shiny app on the Mosaic crochet.
Oh my God.
I imagine there's a few Shiny apps in your future these next few months too.
I've made all these Shiny apps that are, like search government meetings by full text and weather and this and that. And I do crochet, not now when the weather's warm, but in the cold weather I crochet. And there's this thing called Mosaic crochet, and people, it's like a very intricate way of designing it, like you design the pattern. And I was trying to, I'm never going to design my own pattern. I always used to say at work, nobody pays me to design, and there's a reason for that. But I wanted to like understand how it worked so I could better, work on other people's designs. So I made a little like Shiny app, and then I'm like, well, I already made it. I'll put it out there. Oh my God, it's like the most popular thing I've ever coded. Like I have to like check to make sure no one's using it before I reboot my little DigitalOcean server, because they're like people from all over the world on that thing. I'm like, really? So, you just never know.
That's awesome. There was an anonymous question from earlier that was, you mentioned that you're learning Python. Are there any resources or tools that you'd recommend as a Python learner?
Oh gosh, yeah. And of course, I can't think of it off the top of my head, but there are a couple of online resources that are really good. I'll try to dig them up afterwards.
Yeah.
The other really interesting thing for basic Python is, sorry to say it, but ChatGPT, it's actually a really good tutor. I mean, I tell the thing like, I want to learn how to, again, it has to be something like popular where it has a lot of things, but I want to learn how to manipulate data frames and using pandas, like here's what, and then someone, I'll find this also because someone has a custom, what they call a custom GPT, which is a way to like have ChatGPT do a specific thing. And they have one to create a tutor. So you actually use this thing and say what you want to learn, and then it like does it. And it's really interesting. So I use that thing to say, I want to learn how to do Python, like polars. And then it like creates this whole like it's kind of amazing. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. I mean, the fact that this thing is really just predicting your next token, your next words, your next like portion of words, and it can do this. I mean, I've read all the explanations of it, and it's still just mind blowing. I mean, the people who invented this thing had no idea that these things would be able to code. I mean, it's wild.
Thank you. Well, I know we're down to the last few minutes here, and you've already shared some great career advice with us as well, but I just want to give you the opportunity to also share, is there anything else that was like top of mind, or maybe career advice that you've received over the course of your career, or have given others, that you'd want to share with us?
I mean, I would, people always, this is very counterintuitive, but people always say like, imagine where you want to be in 5 years. I'm like, really? 5 years ago, I had no idea that there would be such a thing as generative AI. It's just, I don't think in this field you can structurally envision so concretely where you want to be in 5 years. I would suggest, think of the broad things you want. I want to be doing cool things with data that interest me, and also X, and then work from there. But, I mean, the pace of change is just remarkable. But I think if you have a basic foundation of what you think you want, and you're good with change, and you like learning new things, you'll be great.
I love that. Thank you. And thank you so much, Sharon, for taking the time to join us today. I really, really appreciate it. And congratulations to you on your retirement as well.
Thank you so much. And I will try to get some of those resources over to you if you want to then share them also. But, particular thing about the people on the Mastodon posting in R, if people should
Yeah, absolutely. And now that I have Libby here helping as well, we will get much better about sharing the resources and links with the recording too.
If you want to hang on for 1 second, I want to see if I can find it like right now.
Yeah.
I think it's just on my server. I think it's just, yes, this is it. I can post it like right now. Stand by.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay, it is here.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of the day, everybody.
Thanks everyone for coming. I'm so glad to see you all.
Have a good rest of the week. Bye, everyone.